I'm sorry for the delay. I thought I saved it on my flash drive, but I think apparently saved it on my desktop. So I got it anyway. Um, Thanks for coming again. Before we get started, right, I had sent out a survey and I got some feedback, and let me just spend not more than 4 or 5 minutes on this. One is there was a survey on mentors. It so happened that there was an error in the survey and it didn't capture the person who was sending it. So I have responses, but I don't know who sent it in 5 cases. So I'm not sure if you sent it early. I think I'd sent out an email. If you'd filled in your survey prior to that time last week, then it didn't register your name apparently. So you're good.
You good? Okay.
Can you hear me, Chris?
Yes, I can. I'm here.
Okay. So I don't have the name. If you are one of them, kindly send it again. Now, the other part is that we started this program to see if we can help research-bound students. It seems like the attendance kept on dropping, and it's kind of dropping again. So I wanted to get a sense for why this is so, right? So I got a lot of responses saying Friday afternoon is not a good time, right? But the reason, one of the reasons for Friday afternoon is that it's very hard to get a classroom. Initially, I think 50 or so people had responded. I had to get a room for so many people, and all the faculty involved have to be available. So this was the time we picked, arbitrarily thinking everybody would be available. We'll have a room available, but I really can't do much about it this semester, but we have to revisit this later. But I think that's one comment in terms of time. Fridays, but we probably have to schedule it in time when everybody can get here. The second is the content itself. I think some of you have said that the content has less interaction and more lecture type material, and that's not our intent. So we can have more interaction. Not sure. Give me more ideas on how we can have more interaction. But we do think all the four of us who've been teaching these sessions is that there is some content that's separate from interaction, meaning there's something here about how to do this, why should we do this, etc., which is not so much a mutual dialogue among you guys. It's more about conveying to you what we know, right? So there is some content pushing, much like learning physics class for the first time or something like that, right? There is some content, but there's also, I do agree, hey, why are you talking about networking when you don't let us talk to each other? Why don't you let us network? Okay, that's a valid point. We have to find a different forum for that, and we'll work on that, try to get a forum where you can interact with each other. Okay, that's by way of the survey. So let me talk about what I want to talk about today. Today we have 2 parts. One is we want to see how to parse a resume, a CV for a person who's involved in research, and try to figure out some ways of what you can do about your own networking. So that's the exercise. If you Googled resume parsing, you may get a totally different result, which has nothing to do with what I have to say, because there are tools where you can put in your resume, it'll parse the different sections of it and format it and give it to you in a different form. That's a term that's used in the IT world for parsing, but I'm not talking about that kind of parsing. I'm talking about more that is geared towards your plan or execution of networking. Okay. So with that, let's talk about this here. Okay, so we want to understand the different sections of a credential, like a CV, they call it a CV, a resume, etc., right? Could be a job application, whatever it is, it's a document that details all the credentials. So we want to understand the different parts in it. What do we mean by aspirational credentials? Anyone? Credentials that you aspire for, right? So supposing you came across someone, a great researcher who you want to, try to emulate, then you probably be saying that would be your aspirational credential document for that person, and then you would see how to, derive your networking goals, at least some of them, some ideas, from that aspirational credentials, right? So we want to talk about that. This is a typo here. From aspiration credentials, we also want to get into network, not goals, but pathways. Meaning not the goal, but how to get there, right? So the second bullet should have been pathways. And then we want to look at a few examples. So again, our goal for this session is to see how to take a CV and see how it will help you plan your network. That's a graphic. So what are the sections of a CV? The people have short CVs, long CVs, etc. But I wouldn't say common, but one that probably is a superset of all the sections is what you see here. So you see across the top, positions. What would that mean? Positions would be what? Pardon me? Experience, yes. What are the different job titles they held? Education, just a chronological listing of educations. Any honors and awards they got. Patents, patent disclosures. Books, book chapters. Journal publications versus conference publications. You all know the difference, right? Journal publication is, a particular journal may come out in 4 volumes per year or 6 volumes per year, and there's a refereeing process. Normally, depending on the prestige of the journal, the lead time for even if you were to get published, maybe a couple of years, 2-3 years, that's whole cycle, right? In contrast, conference publications are short, quick, in a sense. There will be a conference announced, you send in your abstract or extended abstract, as the case may be, and you may get a response saying, yes, it's good, no, it's not good, edit it, whatever. Then it may get published if they have a proceedings. That would be called a conference publication. And then, staying in the same theme here, presentations are where they may not be a conference proceeding. You may just have a poster presentation or a talk, but it doesn't get into any kind of a document in print or in, in the soft copy. Nothing would be there. Courses and education modules is, I'm not talking about just teaching courses, but more about maybe courses that you've developed, a new course, a new educational module. Advisees, this is a very big category for especially academics, because in a networking sense, the professor has a great advantage of growing their network just through their advisees, right? So I won't list them there, and most academic resumes would have that. Professional affiliations, what do I belong to, what organization, what etc. would be the affiliation. And professional activities, anything, you'll see examples of that. And then service activities, could be in the community, but service in the community not for Habitat for Humanity or anything like that, but professional service, like I was a judge in a competition in high school. Things like that would be considered service. Or it could be professional service too. So with that, let's take a different view of a CV. I have here 5 categories. Yes. So I want to call these accomplishments: education, positions, and honors and awards. In a sense, they are accumulation of what you do, right? Like for instance, if you're in school, you get a cumulative GPA, but you get a semester GPA too, right? Cumulative GPA reflects what all you've done so far. Semester GPA may reflect what you did at that time. Going further down, a course grade may reflect what you did in that particular course. In a similar way, accomplishments are like at the high level, right? So whatever you did, based on that, you may get your educational qualifications, but based on that, you may progress through some, positions, and then you may get honors and awards. Those are, I call it, accomplishments. And then you have 2 kinds of products, maybe research products and education products. What are research products? Things like patents, journal publications, conference publications, presentations, right? And educational products would be new courses, educational modules, right? And books, book chapters, etc. Then I have professional relationships. That's an important category in the context of networking, right? And there we have 2 things here. One is advisees. In academic sense, that's more important. Or you can also have advisors that you've been involved with. Professional affiliations, that is a different category. What societies do you belong to, etc. And then under activities, I have 2 listed here. One is professional activities, the other one service. And sometimes people cross-reference these. At least the service may be both professional service and community service. So those are the 2 categories. Now I have a few circles here. There's white circles and yellow circles. So I'm thinking, okay, as I parse these resumes, right? I want to know what is it of interest to me, purely from the point of view of networking, right? And whose resume would I look at? I mean, if you probably would. I mean, if I'm a researcher in a certain field, first time I look at my advisor's resume, and we'll look at my advisor's co-advisor's resume. Maybe I'll look at the resume of other people in the field, etc. They may be my guiding point, or someone similar, though not the same, right? Not in the same area. I have circled a couple things here. One is all activities. All activities, the white circles, I mean by that goals, meaning from the all activities, I can come up with some goals for myself. Goals that are even, some of them could even be short term, that I can work towards, through my networking. And I have another one circled here on professional affiliation. That's a really low hanging fruit, right? It's pretty easy to become a member of some organization. And usually as a student, we all think, oh, why should I spend like, $30 a year or something to become a member? But I think the benefits are far more than the cost seems to be, right? And also you should notice with all the professional affiliation costs, as you become a professional compared to a student, the cost suddenly jumps up 5-4, right? So you may want to start with a student membership. So those are all simple things that you can start with. Now these two categories I've circled because these are ways where you can figure out some pathway to networking. It's not very apparent, it's not easy, it takes some work to do that. But if you closely do some detective work, very fine parsing on the resume, you'll be able to find pathways that other people have used for these kind of networking, right? It's not something that you will learn in a classroom, but yet successful people know how to, maneuver that. So I have I'm talking about a two-step process of parsing the resume, right? At least to get some benefit out of, looking at a resume and, deciding what to do about it. First one is saying, okay, just look at professional affiliations, professional activities, and service, right? And when you look at that, the action items for you would be, hey, let's sign up for some professional organization, membership, depending on what my field is, right? And look for opportunities to complete some professional activities. It takes a long while to build your resume. That's why I'm saying, please, it may be, I got some feedback that says, hey, this time is really not good, or it's a bunch of slides we see, it doesn't register, but unfortunately, networking does take a lot of time. I think Dr. Ugiatsis and I had started by saying that networking is a tedious task, especially not random networking, but intentional, goal-oriented networking will take time. And it can make a difference between having a mediocre career and a outstanding career, really. Okay, so look for opportunities that you can use to, build your professional activities. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we see examples. Look for opportunity to complete service in the community or the wider profession. So there are things you can do right in the community. Like next time someone calls you and says, you see an ad saying, hey, can you be a judge for this high school science contest? Go ahead and do it, right? Why not? It'll be an entry in your resume. And this is how you build your resume. And remember, networking is not just finding a contact and making a call. All those links that you see in a network, they are built over time, and they are built through service, right? And connections, dialogue, etc. So that's step one. Step two is more complicated. I don't have a magic, way of addressing this, but I just want to say, yet it's important. Look in all sections in the research products category. So in anyone's resume, look at their publications, their conference publications, whatever else they're doing, right? And you try to kind of collect these little brownie points along the way. Don't ignore it. You know, as a student, I can tell you my own experience. If I took a graduate class, I would always look to see if I can do something. We talk to a fellow student and see if we can publish something. It's not required for the class, but yet I have two people who are, interested in a similar goal of building their resume are going to work together and get it done, right? And remember, that's the power of collaboration. No one will ask you, hey, so you published this paper, you had 4 co-authors, so you get 1/4 the credit. Nobody does that. It counts for 1 paper, right? Imagine if you had 4 collaborators that you independently collaborate with, you have 4 times the number of papers, right? I'm not saying it shouldn't be like frivolous collaboration, but it should be meaningful collaboration, but it takes some time to invest in that relationship. So look at all the research products and don't ignore educational products. As a student, you can do educational products. You'll see you can do if you're doing some niche area, some equipment that you know how to work it, or some software that you have insights on, a podcast on it, a blog on it. All these are valid points, right? That you can use as a product, educational product. So here, plan to understand the underlying network. For each product, look at who are the co-authors, right? I mean, so far, you may be trained to look at what's the content of a paper. I'm not saying don't do that, you do that. But start paying attention to who are the co-authors. Who are the co-authors, right? And what's their affiliation? Are they in the same school, or are they across the country somewhere, or in a different country? Just be inquisitive and find out where they are from. And how do you think the building of the product was initiated and sustained? In other words, how do you think that particular author built that collaboration? And how did they, journal papers, for instance, may take 2-3 years to, come out as a paper, right? So how did they start that collaboration? How did they sustain it and build that? And last bullet here is, can you begin such a collaboration now? Can you start now? Something modest. Who could be your collaborators? Think about it as you look at a resume, okay? So this is a hard one, but I think it's important to do. Okay, let's look at an example. So, I don't know, how many of you know Dr. Desai? Some of you know, right? Okay. So Dr. Desai is a professor in industrial systems engineering, and last week he was recognized in the White House for the award on excellence in science, math, and engineering mentoring. So they give a few awards, and he was one of them to get that this year. So I thought maybe what better example than someone right here that you may run into, whom I know, etc. Right? So we're going to parse his resume, at least some sections of it. I couldn't look at all his resume; it's too detailed for us. But we'll see a little glimpse of different things and see what happened here, right? So that's the blurb on the award. Okay, so let's look at his professional affiliations. So his professional affiliations are with ASEE. So that by that he's saying that, hey, I'm not just interested in research, I'm interested in education also. IIE, Institute of Industrial Engineers, Society of Manufacturing Engineers, where some of his work lies, mechanical engineers, and the Materials Research Society. So he has a variety of affiliations tied to what he does, right? So my point of putting this up here is try to think about yourself and see what kind of affiliations you should have. Just to repeat myself, it may sound like a lot of money to pay for a professional membership, right? But I'm telling you, the student membership costs are low. They're not much compared to a full senior member. So take advantage of it. Look at the magazines. It'll give you some idea of your, your field. It'll give you another insight. I certainly would encourage you to become members. Sounds like right now that you're poor and you can't afford it, but I think it'll pay itself many times over if you pay attention to affiliation. So this is one low-hanging fruit that I think all of you should consider, and don't have a like a narrow field. Meaning, if you're, let's say, electrical engineer, you should not be just a member of IEEE because that's your parent organization. That's fine. But maybe you're doing something that straddles between computer science and electrical engineering. Then perhaps you should be a member of ACM also, and things like that. So please take the time to decide on a professional membership. This, I think, consider a low-hanging fruit that you should take advantage of. And then once you're a member, then you can probably become an officer of some kind, and that would get into your resume. So please pay attention to this particular part of a resume. Okay, professional activities. So he has listed, again, this is Dr. Desai's, he's listed a whole bunch of things, and a lot of them, some of them at least, may not be accessible to you right now, but however, you can ask your advisor if he or she gets papers to review. You can say, hey, why don't I do that for you? And at least I'll do one pass. I'll review the paper or conference abstract and get a taste of what that's about. As you progress through your research career, you can be a reviewer yourself. So I'm talking now about the reviewer category where he is so many things, so many places, right? Unlike a lot of professions, reviewers don't get paid. They don't get paid anything, right? But yet they're the ones who sustain the peer review process that puts the quality mark on research. Here, the session chair. Session chair would be someone who, anyone has an idea what a session chair is? Role is? No? So when let's say a conference is being planned a year from now, they start a year before the actual conference date. So large conference, they may have about 100, 200 sessions in the conference, in a 2-3 day conference, right? Each session has a chair, so they'll have a theme. They may have a theme, or the session chair could choose the theme. And then once they have a theme, they'll send out a call for papers saying, this is my theme, whatever research you have, kindly send in your abstracts, and then we'll evaluate. So session chair's role is to perhaps set the theme, or maybe that's given to him or her, but they have to solicit papers, they have to put the session together, logistics of it, etc. Right? All of that will be done by the session chair. So that's a good professional activity. So you see a whole bunch. So whatever you can do, just be creative and try to jump in and see if you can add a professional activity to your resume. Service. Here there's faculty, professional service, community service, both are there here. You just have like samples of different things here. Like he has here, for instance, newsletter editor, i.e. local chapter. Right? These are all things that you can do. um, secretary of the IE Piedmont Triad region. Community outreach, there's several things. Science fair judge, organizer of a science festival. So many small things that you can do. I would like you to look at these and see if it can set a goal for you. Again, step one, goals. So these are trying to set goals for you in terms of what you should do by way of networking. Why is it networking? Because if I want to be a judge in a local science context, I have to first maybe either respond to someone asking for it, or being, proactive, going and asking other people, hey, can I be a judge? That's the networking we're talking about here. Okay. Okay, I have a link. Okay. How many of you have computers with you? Most of you? Anyone who does not? All of you have one? Okay, so there should be activity one. So what I'm asking you to do is that please go to that URL you have on that. I can pull it up here also. It's going to take a while to get there. But were you able to get to that? It's the San Jose State. Do you see that? Anyone could not get to the URL? So go to that URL and pick any person, perhaps someone who's in your field. I think a couple of those links are bad. I checked it. So skip the links that are bad. But there are some links, several links which are good. So please go in there and do exactly what we did just now with Dr. Desai's resume. Did you find the resume? Yes? So please take a look at professional affiliations, professional activities and service. They may be titled differently. Is the title different on yours? They may be similar but not quite the same, right? So as you do that, let me ask you, I'll give you a minute, I'll ask you, what action you plan to take. You didn't get one? Question. Oh, yeah. Are we going to choose just So we have made progress. Anyone wants to talk about professional affiliation that they may look at in the near future? Or you already have, whichever? Any volunteers? We'll take this one at a time. I'm talking about professional affiliation. Anyone? Yes?
So yeah, for me, I'm looking to join the assignments of the NSB.
Join what?
The NSB, that's the National Society of Black Engineers.
Okay, I want to be clear here. You should be join that, but that's not a professional society. Okay, that's more you can certainly be a member of that, but I'm talking a professional society that you can identify with. Yes.
I joined EMES.
EMES, okay. You've already joined?
The other day I had to fill out
Okay.
a scholarship opportunity,
Okay. So
and I wanted to list that on there.
okay, cool.
I thought it was a great deal, a great bargain for $40.
Okay, yeah, it's a good deal. Good.
I signed up.
Good, very good. Anyone else?
So I'm already a member of the American Statistical Union.
Say one more time.
American Geophysics Union.
Statistical?
Geophysics.
Oh, geophysical.
American Geophysical Union.
I see. Okay, good. Is that your field?
Yeah, I'm geosciences, environmental engineering.
Okay, very good. Good. Okay. So I urge all of you to, think about not one, maybe multiple professional organizations that you can really participate in. Please remember that just paying the dues and listing it on your resume is not the end of it. There are a lot of people do that, of course, but I have done it for several years also. But I'm just saying, you have to do that and make it work for you, right? So that would be the as expectation. What about professional activities? Anyone? Any plans in the near future? You can be bored. You don't have to, think big. Maybe your advisor will help you.
On November 1st,
Uh-huh.
one of my professors told us about we participated in a workshop on hunger relief and food security.
Okay.
There were poster presentations
Okay. Good.
and
Good.
statistics, and that was right over here at the student center.
Good. Well, I wouldn't classify participation as an activity here. I would say more where you have contributed to it. Like, if, then it would be good. But it's a good start. You can maybe become one of the organizers of the event, perhaps. I don't know. Anyone else? No? Think about it. Maybe some ideas will come to you. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but please think about things that you can do. Okay, last one, service. Service now, let's say service that's in a community level service, but not non-professional but professional. There are lots of things that go on here. There's a National Science Center, the events that happen all the time, the schools, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, they all would like, people in grad education in the discipline to come and say something, enlighten this. Yes.
So my question is just professional activities.
Uh-huh.
Can we classify giving a presentation, an academic presentation as one? That passes for it.
That's fine. I would put that under presentations. It would be more like a research product. So activities are more not really presenting or doing anything in research, but in a supportive way, like a review or an organizer or something like that, right? But think about it. Okay, service, I would say more in the community, and there are lots of opportunities. Just look for them. Okay, let's go on with that. Thank you. Okay, so we want to look at the second part of it, the step 2, pathways. By that I mean, I know where I want to go, meaning here's my goal, but how do I get there? Like if I want to publish a collaborative paper 2-3 years from now, how do I build that collaboration? Especially if I'm the lead and somebody else is, I want to get somebody else's help also, participation also. So I have several here that, again, from Dr. Desai's resume. Some of these may be very distant for initial students. These are all patterns. Now, if I looked at a resume, I want to know, hey, how did this guy get this patent? I can go to the US Patent Office and look at this patent number. He does not list the people here. Maybe it's his individual patent, but if you go to the patent number, you can get the data on info on what it's about, some technical references, who are the other participants. We are more thinking right now of collaboration. So are there other collaborators here? Or are there other pieces of work that other people have done that spurred this, etc. So I would look at This is more kind of out there, not necessarily initially accessible to us. Okay, let's look at journal publications here. So if you look, one thing you should think when you look at a resume is the timing. So if there's a professor who's been, or a researcher who's been in research for 15, 20 years, I really would, I can probably, a lot of the things that they do now would be a logical extension of their being there in the discipline for a while. It's more useful to understand what happened in the early years, right? The early years, what happened? Like for instance, in his case, 1996, probably was a grad student or before that, right? Journal publication. I would go and find out who was a collaborator, maybe a professor, right? But you have to have a lot of initiative to go and publish when you're a grad student initially. And that may not be your final paper in your grad work, but he started doing that early, right? So look for publications. I mean, there may be people who tell you that you really have to get only the best, top-notch publication, but I kind of disagree with that. You should first get numbers and get your confidence up. It's okay. It's pretty rare that someone hits a jackpot and gets the, the top publication first. So you shouldn't be, you should try, be entrepreneurial and try to get publications out right from the beginning. Right? And that's journal publications. Conference publications. These are very accessible to you as a grad student. Very accessible. I can't imagine why you cannot get one every year you hear, right? Or if you go to multiple conferences, you can get multiple a year. Now, I hear students say, "Oh, but I may not get paid to go there, etc." Drive a car, go there, stay with somebody, stay in Motel 6, maybe stay with 2 other people. It's okay. But none of that is reflected in once it gets into your resume, right? They won't ask you, did you stay at the Sheraton? No, it doesn't matter, really. Or did you fly first class? Or did you drive a jalopy? Doesn't matter, really. I would not worry about it. I think you should be more bold and go and do these things. Go to conferences. The advisor will gladly let you go for it. But coming up with the money may be a different question, right? But don't be stuck by the fact that you need money to do this. What's most precious is your time here, right? I would certainly take the time to build your credentials and don't get these money, etc., small things. They'll get sorted out over a period of time, okay? And I'm telling you from a lot of experience. Here are conferences, and you should go and see here from the slide set who he went with. These are probably his co-advisors and dissertation advisors, etc. So the first few years of your career, you may publish mainly with your advisors or committee, etc. That's pretty standard. Presentations. This is one level lower than the conference publications, where there's no proceedings here. So here it's just you go and present, and that has value too. If you go once to a first conference and present, it's quite a humbling experience. You go and learn to talk in front of others and talk boldly. And then when they ask you 100 questions, you come back feeling down, but it's okay. You learn something, right? So I would certainly encourage you to pursue all avenues for, get your resume out here. So educational modules, this is another one. Maybe it's difficult for you to publish a book now, right? It may be difficult. But however, you can, a book chapter is accessible. If your advisor is involved in, writing a chapter for a book, maybe, right? Maybe a few more hours of your spare time, but it's well worth it. But the educational modules is a newer thing that is very accessible to everybody. If we had, let's say, you had a lot of educational blogs or blog entries or podcasts, etc., that you can contribute to. You have to have it well thought out and delivered. Then you can certainly list those as a product that you have worked on, right? And you can see he has one of those. It's a nanotechnology podcast. And where was it for? It was for the National Science Center here in Greensboro. If it's a cutting edge topic, then it will be well received. Okay? So let's take on the second activity here. You can take the same resume in that set or take another one. And what you're trying to do is look at two publications, find the affiliations of each co-author, see if there's a clue about the collaboration formed among the co-authors. Are they from the same school? Are they advisor and co-advisor, or advisor and student? How is that? Can you look at that for a few minutes, please? Anyone want to share with what you found out? Are we clear what we're doing? Take any two publications see who the co-authors were of the person whose resume it is, and see how and what's the affiliation of the co-author and how they may have, started that collaboration. So the point I want to drive home to you is this, right? Bulk of the papers that are published, conference presentations, are collaborative, right? And all collaborations start somewhere. They don't just happen, right? Someone has to take the initiative to and go talk to the other person and say, hey, can we do this together? That's how it starts. So what's that about? That all that is really one facet of networking, right? To begin a collaboration. And you have to be pretty good at that. Otherwise, collaborations have the power of, doing more than what the one person can do. And then you have this idea that if that person writes a paper and you get involved, you get another paper. You have this multiply effect that's possible with collaboration. So it's important to collaborate, but it requires some networking skills. Right? Anyone want to comment? Yeah. Yes.
Well, the one that I looked at,
Yes.
like, they have an advisor / advisee relationship.
Who advisor, advisee, person. All the co-authors? There's only one co-author.
Well, the one that this person mostly has conference publication sessions.
To be, okay.
And it's their
Okay.
advice, it's one that posts out.
Okay. That's very often the case, yes, that's true. Anyone else? So even, I'm just saying, even with advisor-advisee relationship, papers don't happen automatically, right? I mean, it depends on the motivation of the advisor and the advisee. I think that as an advisee, don't be shy to ask that you want to publish a paper. Nothing wrong with asking, bring up the topic. It's not as if you should finish all your research and then publish the biggest dynamite paper ever, That doesn't have to be the case, but ask. I can't say how the response will be from different advisors, but it's worth asking, I think, Okay? Any other thoughts on this topic? So I forgot to bring my right set of slides. That's why there were some glitches here. I have another slide that I didn't share with you. It's not here. That's a reading list. I have two items on the reading list. One is the idea that, if you know of all the citation databases, right? If you go to a certain field, you can get all the papers that are in the field, and you can get cross-reference all the citations. Now, there are some tools to actually, it's called a bibliometric network. So in other words, I can take one paper and connect it to all the papers that referenced it, etc. And build this humongous network. It's called a bibliometric network, right? There are three kinds of networks that can come off of it. One is a bibliometric network, which is saying, hey, this particular paper, what's its relationship to other papers? That's one, right? That's important for a researcher because you can go back and see who else has done similar work. There's another one called collaborative network. In other words, now I don't worry about citation, but I try to figure out, indirectly it's connected to citation, but I can glean information on who is working with whom, right? Not related to topic now, but who is working with whom. So I can come up with a collaboration network. Now the third one is even more powerful. That's called a semantic network, meaning now I'm not going to worry about people, but now I'm going to look at some keywords, and not just keywords, but the meaning of those keywords, the semantics of the key phrases, and then see who are working in similar areas. They're networks that are compiled from the databases of that also. So there's one paper that just talks about the basics of that. And then there's another one that's very useful, you should read it. It's some guidance for new researchers on how to look out for building collaborations. That's all it's about. I have both those links. So if you look at the Blackboard site, that will have the right set of slides. This unfortunately will have mistakes in it, and it's incomplete. Okay. Dr. Obiatsis is going to continue. He has a different set of things to talk about. I'll set up a few of the refreshments I have. Chris, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, I can pull up your slides. Just give me 1 minute.
What's that?
I'll pull up your slides.
Perfect, yes.
It was just a few minutes. Guys, please get some refreshments. Please come on, guys. Hey, Chris.
And I'm all set.
With this probably speaking.
Perfect. Yeah, now I can see the students.
Something to do with PowerPoint. And you probably have to ask Tim, because I'm not on PowerPoint.
Chris, can you hear us here?
I hear you. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You can start.
Perfect. Yeah, just give me 1 second. My laptop froze on me. I'll be right there.
Okay.
This mic thing, we get so tired.
Okay. I don't know, but I can't seem to. Can you see my slides? You can see them, right?
I got the slides. I'll put it.
Okay, excellent. All right. Yeah, I'm all set also. Okay, so how is everyone today? It's Friday, right? So that's good. Dr. Ram did a very, very good introduction about, how can we parse a CV? How can we emulate a CV? But my part is going to be a little more on some of the tools that we have at our availability for networking. We live at a really, really glorious time with many opportunities to connect, even when we are geographically remote. So we don't have to meet in person in order to communicate with other people. That said, some of the tools that you probably know of, like LinkedIn and ResearchGate and so on, we're basically going to analyze them a little more carefully in the last session. So basically, we're going to do that next time. So today, what I want to do, a very, very brief agenda. I'm going to go through some of the tools that we use for networking. Can we change the slide?
Yeah. Yes.
So a brief overview of the tools that we're going to do for networking. I'm going to talk about social media in general, and I'm going to specifically talk about something that we call academic Twitter. I don't know if you've basically heard that thing before, but in essence, like academic Twitter is a very, very active area for academicians and for researchers to exchange ideas. So why use online tools, right? So first of all, online tools are easy. They do not require us to be somewhere in person. They do not require us to actually meet with someone like face to face. Like all networking strategies though, the goals for using online tools are the same. You want to use online tools to access new networks, to identify new trends. More specifically, you want to find out who the trend makers are. Have you heard of the term influencer? Like, on Instagram, for example, people keep referring to themselves as influencer. Well, there is such a thing as academic influencers. There is such a thing as research influencers. And those are the influential researchers that you want to find out about in your area and in other areas. Also, we can use online tools to find jobs, to find fellowships, and to find hidden opportunities. Finally, we are going to learn how to use those online tools to promote ourselves and our brand, right? And by brand, like sometimes with Dr. Ram, we refer to street cred, right? So that's basically your name, your capabilities, and your influences. Okay, let's play out a scenario really quickly. So the scenario that I want to play out is you receive a cold email. you receive an email out of the blue by someone who asks you for help or for advice. What do you do? Let's think about that for a second. So what do you do if you receive an email by someone you have no idea who they are, in your academic email, in your professional email, and they ask for help for something, or even better, they have an opportunity that looks really, really good? So what would be the first thing that you do? Does anybody want to take a chance?
What would you do? You got a cold call. You know the person-
Just somebody picks up the phone, asks you a question, you have no idea who they are, but what they propose sounds really good. They read your paper and they think that you are onto something and they want to work with you on something. Or they have a recommendation for you that, you know, will make your paper even more fundamental. What do you do?
Yeah.
The first thing is I want to Google them, I want to search them.
Perfect. I love how we use Google for this type of thing, right? So you're going to Google them. Exactly. Let's go to the next slide. One of the very, very first things that you're going to do is you're going to Google them, or you're going to ask friends and colleagues about that person, or you're going to look for them on LinkedIn, right? There is no doubt about it. You receive an email that looks good, but you have no idea who it's from. You're going to try to find information about them. So you search for them online. The amount of information that you find about that person online speaks volumes about who they are. So let's say that you look for that person and you find nothing online. Is that a good thing?
No.
You are perfect. Exactly not, right? I mean, it screams like it's a scam. Or you search for that person and you find 6 pages on Google. Their Facebook profile is open. They have all these things about, like, you know, where they've been and like all of those stuff. That's also not great, right? Dr. Ram, can we go to the next slide? So too much or too little information is bad. No professional information, but a lot of personal information is also bad. No contributions, meaning they haven't published or they haven't like worked in your area, that's also bad, right? The general deduction that people will make is that if you have a limited footprint, on professional venues at least, then you are a limited contributor to your community. You aren't an important member of your community if you don't participate in the online discussions. Is that fair? Is that a fair deduction? What do you think? Is it fair for me to say, well, that person doesn't appear online, so they aren't important? What do you think? Is that fair for me to do? No, right? It clearly isn't. I mean, we assume that everybody has the same amount of time and the same amount of savviness to go online and make a persona that actually looks as professional as you are in real life. That said, though, even though it's an unfair assumption, it is an assumption that happens. So we want to work towards fixing that. Does that make sense? We want to work so that you have the things that you need. So I want us to do an activity, and it's going to be like a little bit of a personal activity. So our first activity, if you look at the cheat sheet at the Word document that Dr. Ram has provided you with, is find the person who's sitting next to you, behind you, somewhere. If you're sitting far away from everybody else, just move a little bit, get their names, and see whether you can find any professional information about them. So if you only Google this person, can you find out where they work or what they work on? I want to see whether we can identify, like, you know, what is your research just by looking at your names. And then after that, we're going to discuss some of the good things about this and some of the bad things about this. So I'll give you a couple of minutes. Find a person in the class, preferably someone you don't already know. Google them, and let's report back. You don't have to give me all the details, but let's report back. You can Google myself also. I'm not I'm trying to update all the information, but I don't know if I have. So I'm actually doing that exercise on myself as you're doing it on your friends.
This one, this one. This, oh, this not, this not. This is not.
Okay, are we ready to kind of debrief a little bit? So, did anybody run into the problem where there is like a ton of information, like basically your name is being shared by a ton of other people? Anybody run into this issue where you search for your name or you search for somebody's name and it's basically like, you know, kind of you see a lot of other people with the same name? Did we run into this?
Yes.
Okay, I hear a yes, right? So semi at least. So basically that's one of the issues that happens, right? If we do not have a lot of information about ourselves, we need other characteristics in order to separate us. Did anybody run into the problem where you had outdated information appear first? If you search for myself, outdated information is the one that appears first. So basically my website, the first thing that pops up is from my previous affiliation, right? With North Carolina A&T. This is on me, right? I need to be the one that stays on top of those things and make sure that everything is updated for people to be able to find them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Did we run into any other issues? Anything that you want to share?
Multiple names.
What's that?
Multiple names.
Multiple names, right? Perfect. Yeah. So basically, again, you run into this issue where you are trying to figure out something about a specific person, and then there is like a lot of other people with the same name. Let me give you an example. Is anybody here working with data mining? Like they're working on a data mining application?
Anyone?
So in data mining, there is a professor in data mining whose name, and one of the best professors in data mining, like a lot of fundamental papers were written about from them. Their name is Michael Jordan. So you can see how many other characteristics you need to be giving before finding the specific Michael Jordan you're looking for. Does that make sense? So the more information we provide, the better it's gonna get. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. A brief overview of some of the online venues that you usually look at. So you're looking at Google Scholar, right? So especially for research, like here we're talking about the research engineering identity. So I have a research engineer. The picture and the Google Scholar that you see is from my advisor, Dr. Pardalos. So he's a research engineer, and he's making sure that his picture is up to date. He's making sure that all of his papers appear correctly. He makes sure that all of his co-authors appear correctly in that website. Google does a lot of the work for you. So basically, when you're using Google Scholar, Google will find your work and will help you organize it. But you also need to be on top of that. Another tool that some of you already use, I know that because I'm following your updates on that, is ResearchGate, like a social media essentially for researchers. LinkedIn, it's not only for professionals outside academia and outside research, it's also for us. Academia.edu. And finally, the main point of my talk today, Twitter. How many of you have a Twitter account? Some of you, okay. How many of you know that Twitter is actually one of the most active locations for researchers disseminating research and promoting research? So it's actually a very, very active area. And this is today what we're basically going to do. We're going to introduce Twitter as something more than a social media. We're going to have it as something where we can find trend makers, we can connect to people, and we can become more active in our communities. So Twitter is very prominent. Why? Because we live in an era where very few people are going to spend a lot of time reading 5 to 50-page manuscripts. Oh, can we go to the next slide? So we live in an era where very few people are going to go ahead and read 5 to 50-page manuscripts unless they are interested in the topic 100%, unless you hook them somehow. And this is primarily the appeal of Twitter. Twitter, for those of you that don't know, is short messages, usually less than 200, 220 characters, where you can advertise a specific thing and you can interest people into looking further with what you're doing. It also provides researchers with a sense of belonging, right? Because in Twitter, you can have a society or a group of people with whom you exchange information in very short public messages. So let's go to activity 2. You have your laptops with you. I want you to navigate to twitter.com, and I want you to find a person who is a major contributor in your research area. For example, you could look for your advisor, or you could look for, let's say, a very famous person in your area. Do they have a Twitter account? If they don't, let me know, and I can tell you a few names to look for. But after you've identified a person, I want you to kind of look at their 5 most recent tweets, and I want you to kind of share this with me. So let's take the next 3-4 minutes to do that exercise, and then after that, I want you to share the last 5 tweets about the person you've identified. Okay? So who will you find? And like 4 or 5 tweets, what are their tweets about? And I'm doing the same thing at the same time. I'm actually going to be looking for someone over here. So I did that for you so that you don't have to search for it. But unfortunately, Michael Jordan from Berkeley does not have a Twitter account. But that said, if you search for Michael Jordan, you'll find a lot of Michael Jordans. So you have to search for Michael Jordan Berkeley, and then you can find the Michael Jordan I'm talking about. All right, so my first question is your advisor in Twitter? I see a lot of people shaking heads, right? No, no, no. Is there somebody you recognize on Twitter? Like a researcher whose paper you've read? Does anybody have a nice story to share?
No one found anybody?
What's that?
I was asking if anybody found any person who Twitter account.
Not? So basically, no one has found somebody?
Anybody at all? No? Okay, seems like zero. You probably have to list the name.
Okay, so if no one has found anyone, I want to point at somebody myself. So can you go and find an account called Super Networks? One word. So Super Networks. Let me know when you found that person. And let's kind of see a little bit what that person is tweeting about. Got here? Okay, so we're talking about Dr. Anna Nagurny, a very famous person from the business school in the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. She's working with networks, hence her name, Super Networks. She also has like a very famous virtual network, virtual center for super networks. Let's take a look at her last 5 tweets. So the last tweet is not really that much of a research, right? But it has to do with a news article, basically, a video. It's kind of like an idea, a general recommendation. Let's use nature-based solutions, okay? Her previous tweet, so the second before last, is talking about Maryam Mirzakhani. I don't know if you know her, one of the most famous Iranian mathematicians. Unfortunately, she passed away, I think like 2 or 3 years ago. Basically, she's talking about a new prize, a new award that will be awarded to outstanding early career women mathematicians. Her previous before that, she's advertising a talk that happened today over there at Super Networks, right? So in her lab, somebody came and gave a talk. So she celebrates that idea. Then after that, she has her paper. So you see how she has a paper, Networks in Economics and Finance in Networks and Beyond, a half-century retrospective. And if you go even lower, you will actually find that she's also advertising the work of her students. So that's an account that I really enjoy because it's a very diverse account. It isn't used solely to promote herself and her work. It is used as a champion of everything related to operations research and to management science, which is my area at least. I guarantee you, there are people who you know and there are people who you follow, right, whose research endeavors you follow, who are very active on academic Twitter. All right, so let's go into the next slide. So Twitter is underused and misused. It is underused because many researchers believe that it is essentially, you know, like a time waste and a time suck, and that basically you don't need to use it to promote yourself. And also, it is misused by many people who think that I cannot really put everything about myself in like a tweet of 150, 160, 200 characters. So I'm just gonna post a link, and then that link is gonna get you to the paper, and then the paper is this huge, big manuscript that we talk about. That said though, Twitter shouldn't be underused, and it shouldn't be misused. It's got a purpose. Twitter's purpose is that it is a win-win for networking. You both get visibility, but at the same time, you also provide other researchers with visibility. So in the remainder of today's lecture, I'm just gonna give some pointers about how we can use, how we can set up, and how we can, let's say, play around with Twitter. Now, in the beginning, some of you raised your hands that you have a Twitter account. Some of them did not. Those of you that didn't, I highly recommend getting a Twitter account. You don't really need to post all that often. And those of you that do have Twitter, if you use it for personal, like or for information, like for example, to get the news and things like that, then I strongly recommend you create a second Twitter account that is associated with yourself, basically, that is associated with your research. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect. So now let's move on into the setup and into the rest of the things. So establishing your profile is important. So when I'm talking about profile, put your full name, treat it as a LinkedIn account, treat it as an account where people are gonna look for you. Have a professional picture, right? Make it easy for people to both find you. And then after they find you, you also wanna make sure that they identify you correctly, right? So don't have a nickname that some people recognize you with. Don't have, let's say, something that's not your picture over there, because then it's not gonna be, people are not gonna be able to recognize that it is indeed you. It is also a good idea to have a website, right? That basically you have in your bio what your website is. That helps a lot of people who are just searching for this information right away. The third and most crucial part of academic Twitter is figuring out who to follow. So who do you follow? You can follow your mentors, you can follow your colleagues, you can follow organizations, right? Your university, your department, the company you work for. But most importantly, you can follow conferences, you can follow journals, you can follow those types of things. And I have an example. Did you know that journals have Twitter accounts? So journals advertise a lot of their information on Twitter accounts because they've recognized that people who care are gonna look at the Twitter much more often than if they just blindly send you an email. How many of you receive emails from publishers? Every single day, right? Every single day you get emails from publishers that say, hey, we want you to publish this work, or look at this special issue, or look at this new journal we are making. So I want to show you an example of a journal account. So in the next slide, I have Elsevier's. Do we know Elsevier? So Elsevier has about 25 Twitter accounts, different per basically field. So this one is specifically the operations research Elsevier field. And you'll see that it is being followed by some people, right? For example, it says who of my followers actually follow Elsevier. And then I also have some of the most recent tweets that they have. Notice that Anna Nagurny appears again over there, right? So ORMS Elsevier retweeted Anna Nagurny's tweet. And then there is the Twitter account for a conference, the Euro Online conference. And basically you see that this is essentially how you connect to the journal, and then you find out exactly what it is that you're gonna do. Any questions about this? Does your journal, do the journals you publish, or does do the publishers you're interested in, or does North Carolina A&T have a Twitter account?
Yes.
The answer to all three is yes. Was there a question?
No.
Okay.
Discussion.
Next slide.
Yep, next slide. So how do we use Twitter for academic purposes, right? So we use Twitter for networking by tweeting articles that are relevant to your research, or even better, articles that you have authored, right? Don't be afraid to put yourself into the conversation, right? So basically, if people are discussing about something and you have published work on this, go in there, guide, like show them the work, summarize what you have. So if you are talking about articles that you have authored, make sure that you have like a small self-contained description to go with the tweet. Sometimes we call this an elevator pitch. Have you heard the term elevator pitch? So if you've written a paper and you want to advertise it on Twitter, make sure that you have something that people can recite and immediately understand what the paper is about. You can also tweet general ideas, questions, thoughts, food for thought, right? Those types of things, like Dr. Nagurny did earlier. You can answer questions and you can participate in discussions. Somebody has run into a problem, they sometimes post it on Twitter. I'll give you an example. There was a friend of mine who posted on Twitter like the other day about a conference that we were both attending, and she was saying, does anybody else bring their kid to the conference? Because I am looking for like, you know, a nanny or a person to stay with them, and I cannot find one in Seattle. So immediately people started responding, and she created a group in order to accommodate this kind of thing. The other one that is important, and Dr. Nagurny has always advocated this, is celebrate successes, both yours and others. Congratulate people who have gotten something on Twitter. Announce wins and announce things that are going well for you, right? So basically, don't just think that people want to know that you are doing well. People want to know what you're working on. And finally, you can tweet strategically to the people you want to learn, right? To the people you want to know. So you can basically talk about something and you can strategically mention a person who you don't know, but who you think might have useful ideas for you. Okay? And next slide. As far as academic Twitter is concerned, a lot of conferences actually have hashtags. Have you been to a conference recently where there was a hashtag and people were posting tweets for? So in most cases, conferences have hashtags. Find out what those are, and then don't wait until the conference starts in order to start tweeting or start figuring out what people are saying about it. Find out who is attending before the event, right? So in many conferences, people will start tweeting a week before the event starts. Also, because Twitter has become so prominent in for academics and so prominent for researchers, most conferences will nowadays post social media guidelines. Universities also have social media guidelines. Organizations have social media guidelines. So most organizations nowadays are going to have this. Read it, make sure that you abide by it. And finally, I think this is a good recommendation in general in life. Don't tweet about negative things, right? Negative things are important in academia and in research, and we definitely need to address those. but they are better reserved for personal emails and face-to-face meetings rather than a public venue like Twitter. Does that make sense? Finally, I have the last activity of the day, and then after that we can start celebrating Friday. Based on what we've discussed over the last 15 minutes, so we started talking about Twitter. Can you tell me one positive thing about Twitter and one negative thing about Twitter for academic purposes? So what I've established as research Twitter, academic Twitter. So if possible, discuss that with the person next to you. And now I do want you to share. So don't just look at me. I want you to basically tell me a positive and a negative thing. So what is good about Twitter and its use for networking? What is bad about Twitter and its use for networking? Okay? All right, I'll give you like a couple of minutes, talk it through, pairs, and then after that, report back to me. So who wants to tell me a positive thing about using Twitter for academic purposes and for research networking purposes?
I will. Chris?
Ram, can you tell me what they say? I cannot hear very well, unfortunately.
Yes, I'll tell you. Positive thing is the most current information in the research.
Perfect. Actually, that's a very, very accurate point. Research moves fast. So basically, Twitter is a way to make a claim and be like at the state of the art really fast. But that's excellent, excellent. Yeah. And what else?
So definitely it's going to improve collaboration.
Speak up, Mike.
I said definitely it's going to improve collaboration.
Improve collaboration.
Ah, perfect. Yes, exactly. Right, as we said, it gives you a sense of belonging. Many researchers, especially in the beginning of their careers, it can feel a bit lonesome, right? You are starting and you see all these people that are so far ahead of you working on these very interesting problems. It is a very nice way to figure out collaborators and a very nice way to figure out that other people have similar feelings to you. So academic Twitter kind of gives you this support and these collaboration opportunities that you need. That's another really good point. Anything else positive?
Another positive is that it can help you accelerate your research, because someone might come online and just post something that will spark up whatever you're doing. So it could help you accelerate your research.
Perfect. Yes, they point you to the right direction much faster, right? So of course you cannot overdo it by always looking to Twitter, but at the same time it can really help pinpoint like who are the active people, who are the active areas of research. Let's go to the negatives. Can somebody tell me a negative of using academic Twitter for networking purposes?
Too short.
Too short, excellent. Research is nuanced. Research is in the details, right? So we always indulge, like we always are interested in figuring out the details of our approaches. Twitter sometimes can feel a little hasty. So too short, that's a very, very good representation of a negative. Does anybody have another negative?
Negative tweets can lead to even the job would get lost if you give negative comments to any posts or.
I apologize. You got interrupted for a second. I'm really sorry. Would you mind repeating?
Too many negative comments or like negative ideas towards any research work will even take like you can come out of your present job.
Sure. I agree. So Twitter isn't really built for academicians and for research. Twitter is built to accommodate the discussion of worldwide operations and of everything. And along with the really good things that we established academic Twitter can be used for, you also get a lot of the negative things, right, that you are not looking for. So you're absolutely right. It can feel like a distraction, and it can feel like it's making us like in a more negative mood, of course, right? So that's why in the next class, we're gonna focus on tools that are specifically built for research, specifically built to foster those types of collaborations. So we're gonna get the good things about Twitter, and we're gonna remove all the bad things about Twitter. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Perfect. So that's exactly what we'll do next time. So Dr. Ram, I think I am set. Do we have an activity for the students for next week?
So in the last two sessions, we had an assignment. I'm not sure I got your assignment from last time back. You guys attempt to do it? Okay, just if you look at the blackboard side, there should be a sheet. These assignments are more for you to bring very little idea to some kind of closure. So please look at it. And as for today, Chris and I talked about this. I think perhaps what you can do, I can say from my side, it would be good if you decide on belonging to one or more professional organizations, if you're not already a member. Then decide on at least one either service activity or a professional activity that you can pursue in this academic year. Those are two things. And then, Chris, do you want to add to that?
So did you tell them about, like since in the next class we're going to talk more specifically about tools, maybe it would be a good idea if they created accounts?
Yes, so the suggestion is for you to create an account in ResearchGate and academic.edu, academic.edu and ResearchGate. Can you?
I have one.
Okay, good. Okay, guys, thank you. Thanks for coming on a Friday afternoon. Okay?
Thank you all. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ram.
All righty.